Hello everyone, today we're going to talk about filling out job applications. So why do employers even use them? A couple of the reasons is, one, it gives them a standardized set of information from all the people who apply. They get that same information from one person to the next, whether it's on their resume or not. And a lot of times it's information that may not typically be on a resume. What hours might you work if we hired you? Have you applied here before? Have you worked here before? Things like that you typically wouldn't put on your resume. Sometimes they ask for more detailed job history. Sometimes it will be question and answer to see how you would react in certain situations. So it can be more of a screening. Lots of things that they put on resume, on their application. And part of it is just another piece of the puzzle to figure out who am I going to give an interview to. Unfortunately, with most employers, most of the time, they are trying to figure out who to give an interview to based on a few pieces of paper. You've given them a resume and a cover letter and a job application. And so based on the words on those papers, they're going to decide, do I want to sit down and actually meet you? If you go in to actually pick up an application or ask about an application, be ready just in case they ask you to do an interview right there on the spot. Sometimes you walk in, the manager, the owner, they're not busy, and they may say, hey, you know what? Let's just sit down and talk about it right now. Let's do an interview right now. So mentally be prepared. Also dress professionally. Again, you're playing that part of looking like you're ready for the job and you're interested in the job and you're ready for that interview. You may not always get an interview when you walk through the door, especially right now, not right there on the spot. But if you dress professionally and you have made an attempt to look nice, sometimes that sends the impression that you were really wanting this job. If you show up and you're dressed in pajama pants or you look like you just came from the gym, it looks like it was an afterthought. And I've heard of employers saying, that wasn't a good first impression. If you dress professionally, if I happen to be there, I'm going to see that you've made that attempt. Or the person you ask for that application may relay that to me as an employer too. Be polite. You should be polite through the whole process. It's a nice way to show your appreciation that they're considering you for that potential job. And also a lot of times things happen and people will say, man, that person came in, they were really polite. If they turn in their application, you should probably consider them. All right, so you've got this application now. Before you get started, you want to make a copy. And that way, if it's a piece of paper, if something happens to it, you make a mistake, you have that copy to fall back on. So you can do a rough draft and a final copy. Now, we're going to be talking about paper applications, but there's a lot of them online, and we'll be talking a little bit about that also as well. And a lot of it crosses over. So you'll want to be very thorough and very professional, whether it is a piece of paper that you're filling out or it's online. There's still a lot of businesses using both of those. Before you get started, go gather all the information you think you might need. There's nothing worse than sitting down, writing a few things, than having to run and get some information and come back and start writing and then having to go get more information. So get as much of that together as you can before you get started. Having your resume right there. A lot of times there's some information that can be transferred over. Maybe you've already thought of the dates and the things like that can be used. Your social security number, a lot of times for security purposes, that may or may not be asked for, but it's nice to have that ready because most people don't have that memorized until they actually start filling out a lot of applications. Your driver's license number and contact information for any references. A lot of applications want to know who your references are right there on the application. So if you have that together, again, you don't have to go look for it. Information on previous jobs. A lot of times they want more detailed information. So what was the names of your past bosses? What dates did you work there? Pay that you received from those jobs. All right, some tips for completing them. Before you start, read the form and be careful that you follow directions. Sometimes directions can be their way of just judging, can you follow directions? So know what you're supposed to do. Sometimes there's crazy things that you have to do to fill out the application. Just make sure you do what they ask. And also sometimes the way they word the questions, be careful, because a slightly different wording can mean slightly different information. If you can, type it. If you can get it into a PDF form, you can usually open it. If you can get it into your Drive, you can open it with a Cami and use that to type in your information. Sometimes you can find them online that you can type them in and print them off. If you're writing it, blue or black ink are more professional. Don't use colored ink. Fill in all blanks, and we'll get there with some examples. But if anything doesn't apply to you, you're going to write NA. So if you haven't been in the military and asked about military experience, you put NA. Check grammar, check spelling. Make sure it's a really good copy before you submit it. And that same thing for online applications. A lot of times I see people make more mistakes on online applications because they're lazy with punctuation, or especially capitalization. So make sure it's, again, very professional, and you check it before you hit the submit button. Or if it's a piece of paper, check it over and then maybe do a final copy before you turn it in. When you date it, it should be the date that you're turning it in. So if you're filling it in today, you're going to turn it in today, put today's date. If you're filling it out today, but you're going to turn it in tomorrow, put tomorrow's date. And then be as neat as possible on the application. Sometimes if you have bad handwriting, your teachers, they're going to try to figure out what you're saying. But employers, that if they can't figure it out, they can't read it, they probably will just throw it away. All right, so the position, put down a specific position that you're interested in. That can be very helpful for an employer to know exactly which job you're looking at. And try to use the terms that they use if you know, or at least something professional. You wouldn't want to go to apply to Taco Bell, for example, and say that you want to be a taco boy. My guess is they probably don't use that terminology. If you go to Subway, a lot of times they call their employees sandwich artists. So again, use something professional for the job that you're looking for. Avoid writing anything. There's a lot of companies that have a lot of positions, and there's probably some that you're qualified for and some you definitely are not. Okay, the start date, give them enough time that you can give your current employer your 2 weeks notice. There are employers who say that if you say, well, I'll just quit my job right now and I'll start tomorrow, that they look at that as being a problem, because your past employer, you're not going to give them any notice at all. You're just going to leave them high and dry. They don't have time to replace you. But if you give them that notice, then if you leave later on down the road for them, you'll give them the courtesy of having 2 weeks notice so they can prepare and replace you. If not, you're looking at leaving them high and dry, and they wouldn't have the notice or the time to replace you with that, without the notice that you've given them. So give 2 weeks notice and let them know that that's what you would plan to do. Yes, I realize that some employers, you give them the 2 weeks notice and they're like, no, never mind, you can be done today. But give them the courtesy that they could use that if they wanted to. Give a date that you can begin work for that start date. If you could have no job and you could start tomorrow, put tomorrow's date. It makes it a little more concrete. All right, salary-wise, you have to be careful. Sometimes they'll use that as a screening tool. Some good responses would be a range. I would want to make between this amount and this amount, or it's negotiable. But you probably want to do a little bit of homework, especially if you're putting any numbers down, to make sure you're not putting something way out of the league that they would be able to pay you. Because if you put down that you want to make $25 an hour working at McDonald's, most people probably aren't going to be able to do that. So your application can be thrown away because of that. Education-wise, you're going to list your high school. Vocational schools, if you go to Sentinel they could have a career center or a vocational school section, or it could be in an other section depending on how they set up the application. This goes for everything on an application, but I think talking about school names is a really important one. With abbreviating, you want to abbreviate as little as possible throughout the whole application. But sometimes with applications, they don't give you enough room to write everything out. So if you can't fit it, you almost have to abbreviate to get everything in. I've seen really tiny boxes to put the school name and address all in one small box. But don't over abbreviate. If you put USHS, yeah, people in Upper Sandusky know what that is. But if it's somebody coming in from outside of Upper, or you're applying somewhere when you're in college, they may not know what that is. It's also not a real professional look. So at most, I would abbreviate high school. So Upper Sandusky HS. For years about completion of the program, and this will apply later on when you go to college or training programs, give the year you're going to graduate or you'll be finished with that program so they can see when that completion will be. If you're planning on attending college, you can write planning on attending Bowling Green State University in the fall of 2020. But I would only use that if you are a senior and you've been accepted to that school. If you have not applied, you have not been accepted, then I would not write that down on the application at all. Okay, work experience, again, like the resume, it should be in chronological order. So you're starting with the most recent job, and then you'll go backwards with however much space that they give you. So if they give you enough for 3 jobs, which is very typical, you give your most recent 3 jobs. Make sure you completely fill in the information. A big one is accurate names. A lot of times I see people that will say, well, I know my boss's first name, but I have no clue what their last name is. This is the time to find out. Don't put in that you worked for Bob. What is Bob's last name? Dates, a lot of times they may give you boxes to be as accurate as the month, day, and year that you started and ended working for that company. Be as close as you can. Sometimes if you can at least know month and year, day-wise, if you're a little off, it's not going to make a huge difference. Complete addresses, complete phone numbers. What was your job title? Those are things to start thinking about for all the jobs that you've had. If you haven't had a job, which is typical for some high school students, don't leave that section blank. Don't just write NA, because that's a big section and that would draw a lot of question marks to it. So instead, give them some information. Say something like, I haven't had a job because I've been focusing on my education. Give them a reason why there's nothing there. All right, reasons for leaving previous jobs. You definitely want to be positive. Don't be negative about things. If you say, I left because my boss was a big jerk, what are you going to be saying in the future about this person if they hire you? So things that you could say, it could be a school conflict. It could be a scheduling conflict. It could be you're looking for a better opportunity for advancement. It could be lack of work. It could be a seasonal employment. It's obvious in Ohio in January, you're probably not working at the city pool. So things like that are positive, they're acceptable, but don't say things that would be negative, especially about management. Reference-wise, you never want to use relatives, and a lot of times I've seen on applications that it'll actually say do not use relatives. You should also not use minors. You don't want to use your friends from high school that are somebody that you've grown up with. They tend to not, again, have a lot of work experience, and they are not looked at as professional references. So think of people like teachers, guidance counselors, coaches, people at church, club advisors, band required advisors, things like that. Make sure that whoever you pick, you ask them ahead of time, make sure it's okay with them, and verify your contact information. You don't want to put down someone's name and then have the number be an old number and they can't contact them. It doesn't look good on you. So like I said, good references, teachers, coaches, club advisors, counselors, principals, ministers, neighbors. Think of all those people. Okay, usually at the end, you're going to sign. Sometimes if it's an online application, you're typing in your name as your signature. When you sign a paper document, it should be in cursive. You should not print it. And then once you sign your application, it makes it a legally binding document. So you want to make sure that you are correct and there's no misinformation or anything that could be made up on that application. If you're hired and they find out you lied on all of your application materials, they can use that as grounds to fire you. And sometimes it's going to show up that it's not real anyways once they start meeting you or questioning you. When you're finished, keep a completed copy. Make a copy of the one that the good copy. If you do it online, you may want to try to take a screenshot or save it so that you have that just in case. Some good reasons to have an extra copy. One, if it gets lost in the mail, you still have it. Another reason would be to help you with other applications that you're filling out. Maybe you're filling out several of them, and sometimes things can be transferred over and you have that information together. You want to read and edit carefully. Make sure it's a really good copy. You didn't make any errors, spelling mistakes, grammar mistakes. Everything's very readable. Again, that's why having a rough draft and a final copy can be a really good thing. When you're doing it online, before you hit submit, go back and read everything. Make sure you're capitalized information that should be capitalized. Make sure there's no spelling errors or grammar errors, no typos. All right, so now I'm going to go through an application and talk about what you'll be doing to fill that in. And so the one that you'll be filling in as your assignment this week is just a practice application. It is not for a specific company, so you can decide what job you're actually applying for. And when you type things in, again, you want to make sure that you're doing this very accurately. So we're going to type in the date, and I think it looks more professional if you actually type out the date, and then your name, your full name. Now middle initial, you can just put your, for middle, you can put your middle name or you can put your middle initial. For the social security number for my class, you can leave that blank. You don't need to put lines through it or anything else, just leave that alone. Current address. Again, keep your abbreviations to a minimum. And when you're typing, usually it gives you plenty of room so that you don't have to abbreviate. Now, when it asks for address, if it doesn't give a separate box for city, state, and zip code, you need to put that in. Okay, this one gives a current address and permanent address. This might be something you guys use in college. It's probably something that doesn't really apply to you right now. College, if you're living in a dorm, that could be your current address, but when you go home, maybe your parents' address is really your permanent address. So if that doesn't apply to you, we're just going to put NA. Okay, same thing here with phone. Home phone, a lot of people are getting rid of those. So if you don't have a home phone number, you just have your cell phone number. Just put that in. If you have a home phone number also, you can write that in. If not, you can put NA, but you should have a phone number that they can contact you with. Email addresses, be careful. You want something that will be professional. If it's a phone, the email address you created when you were in middle school and it's some nickname, you may want to pick something else that's more professional. Okay, position desired, like I said, this is a generic application, so you can pick the position that you would like to apply for. Availability, what day can you start? Again, be realistic. Do you have to put in a 2-week notice? If you do, give that within your dates. And you could say, I will need 2 weeks once hired. If you have no job and you could start tomorrow, you can put that you can start tomorrow. So maybe we can start March 5th, 2020. Ooh, not 2010. Okay. Date of birth. Again, you're going to write that out. And a lot of times they want to see if you are of age or if you need a work permit since you're in school. Okay. The second page for this one, do you possess a valid driver's license, yes or no? And we're going to put we're just going to see what I want to do. We're just going to highlight that. And we probably have a driver's license in Ohio. You're going to put your driver's license number. I have no idea what mine is. But you can put that information in. Are you legally authorized? And for these, if you were actually writing it out, I wouldn't highlight it. I would circle it. But that's not going to be real easy with doing it on Google Drive. So are you legally authorized to be employed? Yes. Have you been convicted of a crime? Yes or no. If you put yes, you need to explain that. All right, your education. This little box, they want the school name, city, and state. Sometimes I've seen boxes like this or smaller where they want the school name, address, city, and state, and all of that information there. So like I said, keep your abbreviations to a minimum. Okay, course of study or major. For high school, it doesn't always work real well, but I would say if you're here just to graduate, you'd put general. If you are taking college prep classes, you can put college prep there. If you are taking college credit plus, you can write that in. But it's just kind of that general track of where you would be. Have you graduated? You guys have not graduated. And in that box, I would give my graduation year. And for most of you, that would be in 2021. I don't want that highlighted. None. Oops. Got an extra 2 there. Okay. Degree received. This would be another place you could put the graduation year instead of the graduation box, although it makes more sense maybe in the graduated box. Again, a little bit, the degree would apply a little bit better to college, but we'll just put that we are getting a diploma. College information, again, if you're a senior and you've been accepted, you could put that you plan to attend Bowling Green State University in the fall of 2020. And then your other, for you guys, if you go to Sentinel Career Center can go in there. And that's in Tiffin, Ohio. And then your course of study or major, what program are you in? You again have not graduated. And degree received, there's a lot of certifications you get, so it may be like a certificate. You guys that go to Sentinel might know that a little bit better than I do. Okay, and then it goes to employment history. It gives you room on this application for 3. If you have not had a job before, find a good place, and I would say in this company name right up at the top, give that sentence, I have not had a job because I've been in school. If you have had jobs, whether it's one or multiple ones, you want to start with the most recent, and then you want to work your way backwards. So I'm just going to put 1 in, and then to give you that idea, but that would be how you would fill in all of them. So we'll say we worked at McDonald's. And maybe you started working there in 2017, and you're still working there now. Then you can put to the present. I wouldn't put to 2020. Sometimes that makes it a little more confusing. Maybe you started working, I don't know, in May. If you put just to March 2020, that could be a little confusing. Did you stop working there or are you still working there? So if you're still working there, just put to the present. If you did indeed stop, put the date, the month and year that you stopped. Address wise, again, complete address because it doesn't give separate places for your city and state. Name and title of your immediate supervisor. So sometimes there's more than one manager. Who is your immediate supervisor? So this is where you should find out what their names are, first and last. And what is their title? Manager, whatever that might be. Again, write it out. Their telephone number. This would be if they want to contact them. And then what was your title there? So maybe you were a crew member at McDonald's. Maybe you were a cashier. And then I give a description of your responsibilities. If you say you're a cashier, yes, it may seem to you pretty obvious of what you had to do, but you want to give a description of that so that you can communicate the things that you did. And sometimes there's things that you might have done that weren't really part of what somebody might think of as a typical job, like cleaning or restocking or something like that. So maybe at McDonald's you were in charge of customer service. You took made change. Maybe you had to clean the dining room. So give that description of what that would be. Reason for leaving, if you're, maybe, again, be positive. Looking for new opportunities. I don't know. If you are working there and you're planning on finding a second job, put that down. And then you move on and do the same thing for your second job and third job, or going backwards in history. Maybe contact the employers listed above, yes or no. If not, they want to know why, so you would need to explain that. Okay, personal references. You need to list 3. There's 3 boxes, so you have to think of 3 people. If you are using teachers or coaches from the high school, you can put down the school address and phone number. So maybe you're using Mrs. Waggy. School phone number is 419-294-2308. Use the school address. Again, they don't give you a separate box for city and state. Okay, and okay, so fill that in completely. Same thing for the next 2 references. I'm not going to fill in all 3 just to save time. Additional information, give some skills. What are some other things that they could take into consideration as they are considering your application? Give something there. What can you do well? Good communications, good skills, good customer service, whatever that might be. And then that will be the end of your application. We're not going to do the peer editing, so I'll take that off of yours. But if you have questions as you're filling it in, let me know. Be as thorough as possible, and make sure before you submit it, you go back and check your work and make sure you don't have any spelling errors. So that's all for today, and we'll be moving on and talking about job interviews next.